Hello everyone, my name is Lydia and welcome. Today we're going to be painting Butterfly with Black-Eyed Susans. I'll go over the materials that you need to do the painting as well as walk through the painting step by step. The materials that you need will also be listed down below in the description box. I'll also provide a photo of the finished painting on my Instagram account, Lydia Pangborn Art. To all of you that have subscribed, liked, or even commented, thank you very much. I appreciate it. It does help the channel grow. So let's have some fun. Grab your paints, your brushes, something to stay hydrated, and I'll meet you back at the easel. The materials I'm going to be using today are a 9 by 12 inch stretched and primed canvas. I'm using acrylic paints, and the colors on my palette today are Magenta, Cadmium Orange Medium, Yellow Ochre, Naples Yellow, Hooker's Green, Cobalt Blue, Dioxazine Purple, Burnt Sienna, and Titanium White. The brushes I'm going to be using are a 1 inch flat brush, a 1/2 inch filbert brush, and a small round brush. And remember, you can always switch up the canvas, the paint colors, and the brushes depending on what you may have on hand or to suit your personal preferences. You're going to need a jar of water for rinsing your brushes, a paper towel or an old cloth for drying your brushes. We are going to be doing a little bit of sketching today, so you need something to draw with. I'll be using a piece of chalk. And an option is to have a bottle that will mist a little bit of water onto your paints, just in case they tend to dry out. So to begin, we're going to put a base coat on our canvas. So we're going to have the flowers looking really big and the butterfly looking real big, like we're zooming in on the flowers and the butterfly. But I want there to be a sky, so I'm going to angle my sky, and as I come down, I'm going to have more of that green base coat, because I'm going to have the bottom parts of the flowers, all the green parts of the flowers down below. So I'm going to start with my 1 inch flat brush, and I am going to get it wet in the jar, just get the bristles wet, and I want to make sure that I get any excess water off my brush. And I have some titanium white, and I am going to get a little bit of my cobalt blue. Picked up a little bit of cobalt blue, and I'm going to bring it here, and I'm going to start to mix this cobalt blue and my titanium white together. And I'm going to press my brush into this paint. And when I press, there's a little bit of water that comes off the brush. I'm going to pick up a little bit more of my cobalt blue because I want a little bit more blue in there. And pull in a little bit more white. So I have quite a bit of paint on my brush. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come, so this is my 12 inch side of my canvas. So if this is about halfway, I'm going to come up maybe about 1 inch from halfway, so about 5 inches from top to bottom, and maybe angle it. So over here, it's maybe 4.5 inches. So it's a slight angle. So from top to bottom, maybe about 4.5 inches. And this doesn't have to be exact. I'm going to start at the top, and I'm just going to start to get my blue on. And if I want maybe about my sky to stop here on this side, maybe I know to come down to there, just a little higher on that side, just at a slight angle. And it doesn't have to be perfect. We're going to have a lot of leaves and flowers that will be more distracting from the background. But we want to make sure that I really wanted a little bit of a sky. And what I'm going to do is, while I have this paint and I am spreading it, and I'm just making nice little X strokes. You certainly can do circles. You can go up and down, side to side, so more like a a basket weave, but I do like to blend it across once I get all the paint on it. I'm going to come in and I'm just going to pick up a little bit more white, and I'm just going to press what's on my brush out. And I do want to make a little bit more of a white sky on this side, so it's a little brighter, a little bit more of the illusion that there's a light on this side of the canvas. Bring this just a little bit down maybe. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in now. I have blue. I'm going to add a little bit more of my blue in. And I'm going to come in and get a little bit of my yellow ochre and just mix that in. So I'm going to create a green color now. And get a little more blue. I want it to lean more toward the green, like a darker greenish blue. And so now I have a green here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to press this into my brush, and I'm going to come below where I started, and I'm going to brush that in. And just work to blend that up into the blue. So I started below, and I'm making those X strokes to blend it up. And it's nice and soft where the blue and the green meet. Now I'm going to make this green a little bit more dark as I move down, and how I'm going to do that, I'm not ready to pick up any of my hooker's green yet. So I'm going to go down and I'm going to pick up a little bit of this red, because red and green are opposite each other on the color wheel. And I'm going to mix that in and come below. I'm going to pick up a little bit more blue and a little bit of my hookers. Get that in. So I want it to be a little darker down here. Get a little bit more of my magenta, just a drop of magenta. You want to add that color that's going to take it back, in this case the red, slower. There we go. So it's a blue-green, but it's darker than what I have here and here. And I came below where I was. I'm gonna make sure I go ahead and get my sides here. Put a little bit on this side. And I'm gonna start to work it all the way down to the bottom. Lift this up so I can make sure I get my bottom. And then I'm just going to blend that up. So it's a nice, soft blend. So the blend from the blue to the lighter green, and then the lighter green to this darker blue-green. Nice and soft. And then I'm just going to come back. And I'm not going to go all the way up this time because I don't want to touch this blue up here. So what we're going to do is we're going to let this dry. I'm going to rinse this brush out, get it nice and clean, and we'll come back with our filbert brush for the next step. So what we're going to do, this step is pretty simple. We're going to pull up some grasses down at the bottom, and here's where we're going to start to use our hooker's green, the darker green a little more. And I'm going to bring some of them up to this very top green area. And I'm going to use my filbert brush to do that. And I've wet my filbert brush in my water and I've wiped off the excess. So I'm going to come here to my hooker's green, pull some of that out. I'm going to add just a touch of my titanium white to it. And I'm on the very tip of my brush, and I'm just going to start to just pull up at the very bottom some of these little grassy areas. And when you run out of paint on the tip of the brush, you certainly can go down and get back on your palette and pick up some more of those, some more paint to put on the tip of the brush. And I just am on the very tip. I'm just placing it down and just pulling it up. And your paint does need to be a little wet. Your brush needs to be a little wet for this. So if your brush does start to dry out, you certainly can dip it in the water again and just start to pull up. And I'm gonna bring some of these grasses all the way up to where they touch the sky area. And at the bottom, what I'm going to do for the very bottom part of my canvas here is I'm going to take a little bit of that, once I get some of these pulled up, I'm going to take a little bit of that purple and add that into my Hooker's green to darken the bottom. You can still use some of the red if you'd like to darken, but I want it to be quite dark down in this area, so I'm going to use a little bit of my purple. Finish pulling up a few of these grasses. There we go. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down to my palette, pull in some more of my green, and I'm going to reach over to my Dioxazine Purple and pull that over so it makes it really dark. I'm going to get a little bit of my white, pull in a little more green. I want to make sure I'm leaning a little bit more to the green side. So when you add white, you can always tell where you are as far as your color goes. And I'm going to keep this color mostly down at the bottom because I want this to be a little darker at the bottom. Make sure I get the sides of my canvas a little bit. And just pull that. And a few of these can come up a little higher. You don't want to go too high with the dark areas. And you can even pull up and pull back down as though you may have like a bent piece of grass. And once you have this the way you like it, I'm gonna make sure it stays a little dark down here. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna let this dry and we'll come back and you're gonna need your piece of chalk because we're gonna get our drawing on. Okay, so I have my drawing on, but I'm gonna go over how I got to this point. And a couple things to think about with your composition. If you are putting flowers on, and you can do as many as you want, I really have put quite a few on this 9 by 12 inch canvas, but you can do just one if you want and put your butterfly on the one. But a couple things to think about is that when you are creating a composition, you want to create some sort of interest within the painting. If you put things dead center and always just directly facing forward, it's not going to be as interesting as if you put things off center and maybe had things leaning one way or the other. So that's why in this case, I want it to feel as though the flowers are leaning a little bit more toward a light source. So I probably will add a little bit more lightness on this side in the sky. And everything with the flower petals that are especially these rounded parts, will be a little lighter on this side than they will be on this side because they'll be getting more light. So if I were to split my canvas in half, so drew a line straight down from top to bottom this way and drew another line straight across in the middle this way, I would have 4 quadrants. And you can do this in thirds as well. So if I wanted to think about the rules of 3, a third here and a third here, then I know that my center's here and I don't want anything really distracting me by putting it in that center. So if I were to do just one flower, maybe I'd want it up in this area over here and maybe lower it down a little bit so I have space to put just my butterfly. If I have 3, I have decided to put one here in this first third of the canvas, and the other one is below it, so I'm not quite in the center, and the other one is over here, so it's in this other third. When you're thinking about drawing the flowers itself, the black-eyed Susan, sometimes called brown-eyed Susans, and also the scientific name, I guess the botanical name would be Rudbeckia. They have these very tall, fat, fluffy-looking centers. So all you're going to do is create a big half circle, and then you'll have a smaller, almost like a smile, like someone's smiling at the base of it. And then from there, you want to draw your petals. The petals tend to be, they tend to spread out from the center more like in this shape rather than just flopping down. So as I drew my flowers, I drew them as though, and some can overlap, as though they are almost spreading out, and then toward the front they may fold down a little bit. And you can look at these online. You can go out and search around and find Black Eye Susans, or if you live in an area where they grow, you can walk around. There's quite a few of my neighbors that have them growing in their yard, so I just go and look around. If you notice here though, I have some of these petals overlapping, some of the ones from this flower. And all it is they curve out and come back in just a little bit. They're not necessarily very dense looking. They're actually, the petals are almost straight with a slight curve to them. So when it comes to the butterfly, the way I like to think about a butterfly, a simple way to draw a butterfly. Now, butterflies can come in different shapes, of course, but if you're looking at keeping it simple while you're learning to do this, I always think of a heart shape. So if I were to flip my canvas, this is my butterfly. I actually have decided that my butterfly is going to be on this flower, and this is the body, and I have a heart shape here. So in case you can't see that very well, I'm going to get a different piece of chalk here. So this is my flower, and I'm turning my canvas, and I'm going to draw, this is the body of the butterfly. I'm going to draw a little heart shape here. And then the second wing that's going to be furthest away is there. And then where these two meet, I will have a little bit of an area here where these two parts separate. So if I were to turn the canvas back around, you can see that a little better. And then there's a little head, and then the little body that has maybe just a little chesty area, and then it comes straight down with another long little area that we'll be able to fill in, and then we can add the little legs and the antenna after we get the butterfly in. So I hope that helps. It's good to figure out where you want your flowers first. So remember rules of 3. So you can start by splitting your canvas in half, and that can help you. The best way to do it is just to practice. You can find sketch pads that are 9 by 12 very easily, and just start sketching out. Divide your page into thirds that way and the long way, and just start sketching out. Figure out where you might want to place things in sketch, and see what you come up with. Maybe you want, instead of a flower down here, maybe you want a bigger one, a taller one here, and then have these two only. And then maybe you want to put your butterfly facing the other direction. You certainly could do that as well. There's lots of ways to switch it around to make it your own. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go back to my filbert brush, and we're going to go ahead and start filling our flowers in first. So I'm back to my filbert brush. It is a little damp, and I'm going to put the base coat of the petals on first. And to do that, I'm going to take some of my yellow ochre. I'm going to add just a drop of my orange to it. Drop more orange. Just want to see a hint of that orange here. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go with this color. I'm going to start putting that on the areas of the petals that I think are going to be the darkest. So this side of the petal is going to be a little darker. And then this side of the petal. So I'm just going to come around to where I think, and this one may have a little darkness because it's facing down. And here, and here. So really what I would consider maybe the bottom parts of the petal. And then I'm going to go into my white, and I'm just going to mix what's left on my brush with my white, maybe pull some of it down if I don't have enough on my brush. And I'm going to go back to putting this on the top parts. And to make the point, I'm coming straight in to make the point, and then otherwise I'm just filling in, it's nice and simply filling in where I drew the reference lines for my petal. And if you like, you can keep something to wipe your finger off nearby, or if you want to use your smaller brush, you can come in and just make little circles within your petals just to blend them. I don't mind getting my hands in the paint because I use, when I say cadmium, I always am using the hues. I don't use the actual cadmium colors, but that's okay if you feel comfortable just sticking your hands in the cadmium. I'm just prefer to keep my hands out of the cadmium, so I just use the hue that doesn't really have the real cadmium in it. And again. And this is just the very beginning stages of our petals. I'm going to keep here, I'm going to keep this one fairly dark underneath here. And I'm just going to kind of tap in. I'm going to go back in and fill those in. So I'm going to do that for all the other two petals that are on the other two flowers. So I'm going to start with the darkest. So this is my yellow ochre mixed with a little bit of that orange. And down underneath here, I think that one might poke out over there a little bit. So this is the bottom part of that one, bottom part of that one. And I'm going to bring it to that point. And this one I'm going to keep pretty dark down under here. As we're reaching back up toward the lighter area, as we're reaching back up to the light, it starts to switch around here, here. And this one may just be dark completely because it's covered up. Then I'll go back to my white mixed in with that yellow ochre with a touch of orange in it, and I'll come back and do the top part. So anything that's down below here, maybe slightly darker. And remember, this is just the base coat, so we are going to be lightening things. We're going to have a bit more of a highlight color as we go. But I'm going to try to keep things that are down lower, down in the grass, a little bit less hit by the lights, a little darker. And you can reshape as you go. If you think that you don't like the way a petal is shaped, you certainly can change it from your drawing. And you can start to see how everything's starting to take shape already. And then once you get your petals filled in, I'm not going to rinse my brush. I'm going to come over into my Dioxazine Purple. And I'm going to take some of this yellow ochre color that I have and just work it up into this Dioxazine Purple. I'm going to take a little burnt sienna even, add that in. And I'm going to go ahead and fill these little places in, the little center pieces here. And again, I'm not doing any special stroke, I'm just filling it in. And I'm only going to do the one side to start with. And I am going to try to dot up almost as though I'm touching the petals. So if you can see, I'm going to touch right into the petals on each of these. And this will give that feeling of the petals growing from that center. And I'm going to add just a hint of my white to that. And then come in on this side. And just start to dot that in on this side. So this is the lighter side to give it that round look. And then you can take your finger and just blend that center out. Remember, this is the very beginning stages, so this is not the end all be all, so not to worry. I'll go ahead and blend that in, and go ahead and blend this in. So while my petals are drying, I'm going to go ahead and switch to I put my filbert brush down, and I'm going to switch to my small round brush. I got it a little wet, got the excess water off of it, and I want my butterfly to be purple. So I'm going to pull out some of my purple and white, but I don't want it a really dark purple. I want it to be, we have these really nice, delicate looking butterflies that are purple that fly near us. Make sure I get quite a bit of white here. I'm going to move this over so I can pick up some of this white and just get that in. There we go. And I'm going to get a drop, just a really tiny bit of this red here, and mix that in. And I'm going to start at the base of the wing, and I'm going to start to pull in short strokes the wing of the butterfly in on each of these. And this is my little front area. I'm going to leave a little divide right now between this section of the front wing. So you can see right here, just left a little divide there. And I'm going to come in and pick up a little bit of my titanium white without rinsing my brush. And I'm going to come from the back of the wing forward, because I do want to create a little bit of an illusion of this little scalloped edge at the back of the wing area here. So I'm just dotting it in. And then I'm going to start to pull that forward toward the purple area I just put in. That's a nice quick way to create a little butterfly wing. So I'm going to do a little white for the other area as well. So this other little wing here, pull that in. And then I'm going to come back up to this purple up here that's a little darker. I'm going to roll my brush into that. And I'm going to come back down toward where the butterfly's body meets the wing and give it a little bit more of those little short strokes there. And then I'm going to do a little line of purple to separate those two wings from each other. And a little bit more purple on my brush. There we go. Get a little bit of white into that. Just roll my brush in to the white a little bit. There we go. And you can see there's a little line that will separate. This is the front wing here. And you can see the little line that separates the front wing from the back. And I'm just picking up a little bit more purple while it's still wet. I'm just going in and creating some little stripes. I want the back wing to be a little darker than the front, so I'm going to take my purple. And it's just mostly purple. There's still a little bit of white left on my brush. And I'm going to come in here and fill out this back wing. Get a little bit more purple. Come up over, just slightly over my leaf there, the petal of the flower. And I want to make sure I attach it into the butterfly there. And I'm just going to pick up a little bit of this lighter purple color and just hit it back in the back here a little bit and pull that down. And you can make your butterfly whatever color you want. If you want it to be pink, orange. I'm doing purple because I think the purple looks nice with these flowers, because we're going to have these bright yellow on the flower. Straighten up that wing a little bit. There we go. And right where there's that area that's these two wings come together, I just really want to make sure there's just a deep purple there, and maybe a little bit more deep purple there. And I can come back in and just hit back here. A little bit more white toward the back of the wings here. There we go. And again, it's just short, choppy little strokes. I'm going to go ahead and get my little body filled in here. So it's a little head. I just mixed some burnt sienna with my purple. And I'm going to fill in my little drawing before I get too far along. And we can come back in and do a little refinement on that as we go. Okay, that's looking good. So I'm going to let all of this dry, and we're going to rinse this brush out, and we're going to go back to our filbert brush for the next step. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start to add some bright oranges and yellows to my petals now. I have my filbert brush, I've wet it, and I've got the excess water off of it. And I'm going to come into my orange and I'll pull some down. I'm going to add just a very, very tiny, tiny, tiny drop of this red to it. I've got some magenta. I'm going to put that in there, and I'm going to pull in some of my titanium white. I'm going to get that on my brush. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to make little areas of orange. I'm not going to cover up all my yellow. I'm just going to start to brush in a little orange here. And I'm going to keep this on the side where I think there may be a little bit more shadow. And then I'm going to add some white to that. And I'll come up to the very top parts of the petals and just start to brush some of that in. So I'm not going to cover up all my yellow, and we're going to actually have a really bright yellow. And again, you can have your small brush nearby to do the blending. I'm just going to be using my finger to blend. Because these are a mix of like a yellowy, orangey color. So they kind of have a little variation in them. Coming in, and I'm just going to stripe up some of the orange. And blend that in. And on the bottom sides again. So again, it's my orange with a hint of the red in it. And I'm not doing anything but little short strokes to bring that color in to each of the flowers. And then I'm picking up some of my titanium white, and I'm going back to where I feel like there may be a little bit more light hitting. And if I want to I'm going to make that petal just a little bit more substantial. There we go. And this is that phase where you're feeling like, But every painting goes through that little phase where you're thinking, oh, what was I thinking choosing these colors? Or what was I thinking this was gonna look good? But give it time. Give yourself time to push through and muddle through these little places in your painting where you're feeling a little apprehensive, a little unsure. I just picked up a little more water on my brush because the paint wasn't moving off as easily as I wanted it to. So now what I'm going to do is I am not going to rinse my brush off. I'm going to come over here to my Naples Yellow, and so you can see there's a little bit of that orangey red color. I'm just going to mix that right into my Naples Yellow, and I'm going to start to work that in. And the paint may still be a little wet, but that's okay. That's on the flower. And I'm going to keep this more towards the top parts of the petal so that it stays brighter. So wherever I think there may be some brighter areas. So I'm coming back and I'm getting some more of that Naples Yellow mixed with a little bit of that orange in there. And I'm just striping that in. So this is phase 2 of the petals. And there's going to be another highlighting phase. We're just getting some different striations of color within our petal here. Make that one connect a little bit more there. And this is where you gave yourself some time, and now you're starting to go, okay, maybe not so bad after all. And then what I'm going to do, I still have paint on my brush. I'm not going to worry about that. I'm going to go ahead. I have a little bit of this yellow purple or yellow orange mix, and I'm going to come over here beside this purple and burnt sienna that I have, and I'm just going to mix that right in, and I'm going to start to use that, and I'm just going to take the point of my filbert brush and work little light areas on the side of the round parts of the flower that I think may be getting a little more light. So it's lightening it just a little more. And this is phase 2 of the color, so we still have a bit more to do. We're just using our bigger brush right now. We're going to be doing stuff with our smaller brush. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to let this dry, and we're going to come back with our small round brush so we can hit some detail and start to brighten everything up a little bit more. So this will be moving into phase 3 of getting some highlights on our painting. So I'm going to clean out this brush and we'll come back to our small round brush. Okay, we're at a phase now where we're going to take a step back and see what's looking good, where are some things we want to work on, how we're going to make this painting start to come together. So I'm going to add a lighter section to my sky over here, and then we're going to start to refine things on the flowers and the butterfly. So I've got my filbert brush and I've mixed up some white with a really tiny, I mean the tiniest bit of my Cobalt Blue I could get in there, just a little dot. And I'm going to start to put that on this side of my canvas. And I'm just putting it in random stroke, and I cleaned off all my chalk marks. And I just want to lighten things up on this side of the painting. So I'm just adding a little bit, and you know, it could look maybe like there's some feathery clouds in the sky. I just want it a little lighter over here. And I'm going up between those little petals just very quickly. Getting some of that light blue on this side. Bringing it part way over. And I'm just going to blend right there just a little bit. I don't want too many of those there. And I might can put just a little bit of that at the very top up here to make it look like maybe there's a few clouds in the sky. I don't want too much on this side. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back in and start to refine the center parts of my petals. So I want this to be, if I start to think about this a little more, I've got a lot of orange and yellows. There's going to be even more yellow highlights on my petals. And that's why the purple looks really good against these yellow oranges. So I'm going to take some of my blue. Now I've got quite a bit of blue. So my Cobalt Blue. And I'm going to grab a little bit of my purple. So it's kind of this bluish purple color. I can pull in just a drop of white. So you can see it's this very blue purple color. And where these lower parts are of my center parts of my flower, I'm going to start to put some of this really bright, vibrant, bluish color in. And I'm just going to stay as much on the tip of my brush as I can for this. So just for now. And I'm only going to bring it around these darker areas here. And this is where I can start to continue. So this is right at the base. I can continue to connect these little petals a little more. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of this white and a little bit of this same color. And I'm going to dip into just a tiny bit of my burnt sienna and bring that in. And I'm just going to start to work that in as well. So I'm just making little dots, just a stippling action, little dot action. And I'm only going part way up. And then I'm going to bring a little bit more of that burnt sienna in. Just want it to be a little bit more, there we go, a little bit more brown than that. A little bit more burnt sienna. Bring that in. There we go. So I just picked up a little more burnt sienna and just working that in. We're going to be switching to our smaller brush in just a little bit. I missed a little bit of my blue right there, so I'm going to go back in, get a little bit more of my blue right there. There we go. And then I'm going to take some of my white. I didn't rinse my brush off, and I'm just going to start to work that into the very tips here. Again, I'm just stippling it in. And a little bit more burnt sienna in that. There we go. I'm going to work a little bit more burnt sienna into all these. So I just picked up just a little bit more of the burnt sienna, and I'm going to work it into that blue-purple color. So it just kind of, the blue-purple is still there, but it's just underneath, because this is a little bit more brown. But I wanted some of that blue against that orange, that bluish purple against that orange. I need to shape that up a little better there. There we go. Get a little bit more. I'm going to pick some more burnt sienna up. So I'm just picking up burnt sienna. I didn't rinse that blue out of my brush, the bluish purple color out of my brush. Get some more of that burnt sienna here. I'm going to make sure that I work this into these petals a little more now so that they connect these petals a little better. I'm going to bring that up a little taller there. There we go. And I'm going to get a little bit of my white. So I'm just going to pick up just a little white and just start to come down and work that in. There we go. A little more white on the tip of my brush, and I'm just brushing that in. I'm just continuing just to dot, dot, dot. And what I want to do is I'm going to take a little bit of, so I'm just working this, we're going to do a little bit more with our small brush to these little center pieces as well. Right now we're just trying to get where we think there may be some light hitting in here. Bring that down just a little bit more there. There we go. All right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of this brush for now. And I'm going to start to move. I'm going to start with my small round brush. I'm going to get it wet. And I'm going to start to pull in some of my Naples Yellow. And I'm going to come up here and pick up some of this titanium white. I'm just going to roll that around on my brush. And I'm going to start to use this, so where these petals meet the center of the flowers, I want to keep a little darker. So at the ends, I want it to be a little bit more of this lighter yellow color. I'm going to add a little drop of water to this paint so it comes off my brush nice and easy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this yellow and I'm just going to start to make little yellow highlights. So I'm making little yellow highlights along the top parts of the flower, but not up to the edge that's closest to the center either. So just little stripes, and then with a nice clean finger, I'm going to be blending that in. I'm going to go right around my little butterfly there. And I definitely want some of this yellow near my purple butterfly. There we go, and you can see how that's making the center look a little bit more dark. And then with the yellow coming in on top of it, it pulls the lighter, it gives it as though there's a shadow up along in here, this darker area, this darker shadow. And of course you can come in and see where things have gone a little bit less shapely than you want, and you can shape that up. I'm going to leave a little darker down through there. I may even come back a little in just a minute with a little bit more of my yellow ochre to hit down in there. This petal is reaching upwards, so I'm going to put the lightest color up there. There we go. So you can see the difference between where I put the yellow on and where I haven't put the yellow on. Stripe that up a little bit. There we go. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to reach down. I'm going to pick up a little yellow ochre, bring it up here. I'm going to mix in some of this yellow, Naples Yellow with my yellow ochre. And I'm going to come back and just stripe that down a little bit on these where there's a little bit more, we want a little bit more darkness. Maybe a little bit more yellow, but not quite orange. There we go. So I'm just picking up a little bit more yellow ochre. I'm gonna add a drop of orange to that. I'm gonna come down here. Keep some of these down here a little darker. There we go. A little more yellow ochre. Come up under this leaf. So where these two, this one is resting over that one, I do want a little bit of a, there's a little shadow that that leaf may be casting, or that petal may be casting over that one. So you can see the variations of yellows, oranges, the brighter yellow, the yellow ochres, and that's really what you want. There we go. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of this orange, just a little bit of it, and my yellow ochre, and I'm going to start to just make little bright yellowy orange dots in some of the places where the light might be hitting. And I'm going to take some of this Naples Yellow, and I'm just going to, I want to keep it pretty dark down here, but I do want to take some of this yellow and maybe dot it back in the background as though there's some little, maybe some indication that there's maybe some other little flowers that may be trying to pop up. just going to take a little bit of this yellow, just plain on Naples Yellow, and just start to hit it around a little bit here too. And one of the things I'm going to do, I'm going to get this, I want to make sure I get this yellow out of my brush, but I want to take some of this purple and I'm going to add a drop of and get a little clean piece of that magenta and a little bit of white. And I'm actually going to put that in little places as well, where there's some lighter areas here. There we go. And this brings a little bit of the purple from the butterfly throughout your painting, and it gives a nice cohesion. It creates a little bit of depth. Even going to take a little bit of it and drop it in here in these in-between places. And maybe even drop it a little bit underneath my butterfly, as though there's might be a little shadow there. And I might even take a little bit of that purple and I dropped in some blue, and I'm just gonna lightly work that in to brighten up these little poofy parts of the center. I don't want too much of that. There we go. And that just pulls that together with your little butterfly friend. So I'm gonna make sure I get all this purple out of my brush. All right, so I'm going to do a little bit of my yellow ochre and some white. I'm just gonna come up here and I'm gonna start to put in a little bit of a lighter color on the belly of my butterfly. And I'm just going to blend that in with my fingers. So he's a little bit more burnt sienna on the top, but a little lighter on the bottom. There we go, like that. And that way we can make sure he's attached, and he's a little, I'm making little short strokes too because they actually are a little fuzzy. They do have a fuzziness to them. So we're going to try to do the antenna. And we want to make sure we can get our brush to a fine point. If you want to do a liner brush, you can. I'm going to mix up a purple. So I'm going to mix up purple and blue and burnt sienna. And it'll give me as close to a black as I can get here. And we really want a fine point. So it's a really light touch, and you want this to be very... I want this to be more of a wet, inky sort of consistency here. And I don't want too much paint on my brush. And if you want to draw where you want to put your antenna, you can. So maybe one there, and then one there. A little more like that. Like that, so you know where you want to put them. So you're going to come straight in, and if you need to, you can put your thumb or your pinky down, and light touch, light touch, light touch, and light touch, light touch, light touch. There we go. I'm going to put a little dot just so we can say it has a little eye, and then put a few little, I get a little bit more paint on my brush so you can put those little tiny legs in. More paint. Another little tiny leg in. Gonna hang on somehow. One more little leg there. Another little leg. So I'm gonna put another little leg in the center here. And then I'm gonna put a little need to put just a little hint of a proboscis there. All right, and I do want to get one more thing. I want to put a little bit of this lighter, lighter orange color here. So let me mix some white. So mix quite a bit of white with some orange, and I want to drop some of the orange in as well to look like maybe there's a few more of these little guys popping up in the back area here. I'm going to take a little bit of that and just kind of dot in around the body here. Give it a little bit more character there. Just hitting some of this orange in places. A little lighter purple. And just hit this wing just a little bit with that lighter purple. Just a smidge. There we go. Just a little more. And I'm going to do a little tiny little highlight on the little antenna here. And there, just a little tiny bit. Maybe a little tiny highlight on the head here. With that little bit of that purple. All right, I'm liking the way it's looking. I'm going to take a little bit of I'm just taking some sap green, just a little bit of red, and I put a drop of white. So mostly sap green, touch of red. And I'm just going to come down here. A bit more. There we go. Just create a few dark areas on either side here and way down at the bottom. One thing I do want to do is I'm going to create just maybe the illusion. Maybe like there's a stem here. And maybe a stem there. I'm going to take some of the sap green and just create maybe a little stem there, a little stem there, and a little stem coming down through there. And then I can pull up a few little dark weeds around those stems. But I'm going to get my little brush and we're going to do that final stage, which is to sign your painting. So it's purple, a little bit of green in it, so it doesn't stand out too much. And we're done. Thanks everybody for keeping me company today. I hope you created something special for yourself, and until next time, bye-bye.